They always thought they were leaving you. They thought they were walking away from love, from pressure, from someone asking for too much. But one day, the silence they once sought for comfort starts echoing back something different. And it's not peace anymore. It's absence, their own absence. Healing begins the moment the avoidant realizes they didn't abandon anyone else. They abandoned themselves. They left behind their needs, their softness, their truth, their own heartbeat. And they did it so early in life. They forgot what it feels like to stay home within. It's a haunting realization because for so long, they built stories to survive. Stories that said, closeness is dangerous, need is weakness, distance is safety. Those stories became their armor, their survival, their logic. But the body never lies. And one day, even their body whispers, I'm tired of running from myself. It's usually quiet when it hits them. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just still. They wake up one morning, and the world feels dull. The things that once felt like freedom now taste like loneliness. They realize that every escape led them further away from home. And home wasn't a person, it was them. This is the moment the avoidant begins to see clearly that all the leaving, all the pulling back, all the retreating into silence wasn't strength. It was loss, a loss of connection to their own emotions, their own tenderness, their own capacity to love. They didn't lose you. They lost access to themselves. For years, they thought they were protecting something, their independence, their control, their freedom. But freedom without feeling is just a different kind of prison. And one day, when the noise quiets, they realize they locked themselves out. They've been standing outside their own heart, watching life through glass. When that awareness arrives, it's devastating because they finally see how much they've missed. All the moments of love they couldn't let land, all the times someone reached for them and they stepped back, all the warmth they could never fully receive. They start to see how they weren't escaping others. They were escaping the parts of themselves that longed to stay. That's the paradox of the avoidant. They long for connection, but the moment it gets close, they feel the old terror rise. Because to be close means to feel again, and feeling means facing the ache they buried long ago. So they withdraw. They rationalize. They say, I just need space. But what they're really saying is, I don't know how to be with me. This is what makes the realization so powerful and so painful, because the person they thought they were protecting was never in danger. It was the younger version of themselves, the one who learned early on that love could disappear, the one who learned that showing need was unsafe, the one who believed being alone was the only way to survive. When they finally meet that younger self again, it's like time stops. All the walls, all the logic, all the detachment, it starts to crack. They realize they didn't push people away because they didn't care. They did it because they were scared to lose themselves again. And in that fear, they accidentally became the very thing they were running from, their own absence. It's the kind of realization that changes everything quietly. They start noticing things, how conversations feel heavy, how their own silence feels lonely, how they crave softness, but flinch when it comes near. They start to see how they've lived half present, half in, half out, and that half life no longer satisfies them because they've tasted love, and now they want to feel it fully. But before they can return to others, they have to return to themselves, to the heart they left behind, in their own defense, to the feelings they buried under years of control, to the self they once silenced. For safety, This is the true beginning of healing. When they stop blaming others for their distance and start listening to the part of them that's been waiting to come home. That's where the story turns. Because the avoidance healing doesn't begin in connection, it begins in recognition. When they see that they are both the one who left and the one who was left behind. And when those two parts finally meet, that's when peace becomes possible. They didn't lose you, they lost the part of themselves that knew how to stay. When awareness starts to hurt, awareness always comes before change, but it rarely comes quietly. When the avoidant finally sees how much of their distance was self abandonment, it's like a mirror they can't unsee. They start replaying memories they once thought they'd forgotten, moments they brushed off, goodbyes that didn't hurt back then, but do now. They start to feel it all, the warmth they rejected, the touch they pulled away from, the words they didn't believe. And suddenly, their logic doesn't protect them anymore because they see it now, not through fear, but through grief. Grief for what they could have had. If only they'd stayed open. Healing begins as heartbreak, not over the people they lost, but over the parts of themselves they silenced. They start to see how many connections they walked away from that were never threatening, just true. And that truth was what scared them most. You see, truth and closeness have always been the same thing for them. When someone saw through their calm, their control, their distance, it felt like exposure, like being seen in a way they didn't know how to handle, because being seen means being known, and being known felt too close to danger. But now, they start craving that very thing. They start longing for the kind of connection they once pushed away, not because it's easy, but because they finally see that the distance never protected them. It only starved them. The hunger they feel now isn't for love, it's for aliveness, for presence, for truth. They start testing closeness again, but it's clumsy. They reach out, then pull back. They open up, then disappear for days. Because healing isn't linear. It's a dance between the familiar and the new, between wanting to be known and fearing what that will expose, between holding someone close and wondering if they'll lose themselves again. This is where compassion matters most, both from others and from themselves, because they're not trying to hurt anyone. They're trying to relearn safety. Their body has decades of memories that say closeness equals loss. And every time they lean in, that memory flares up like fire. So they pause, they freeze, they go quiet, not because they don't care, but because care itself feels overwhelming. This is the invisible work of healing, the rewiring, learning that they can feel affection without danger, that they can need without shame, that they can stay without losing themselves. It's not instant. It's not neat. It's slow and sacred and fragile, but it's real. And when they do start to connect again, it feels different. The first real conversation, after years of emotional silence, feels like trembling. The first time they admit, I was scared, feels like exposure, but also relief, because truth, for the first time, feels lighter than hiding. They begin to see how love doesn't trap them, it grounds them. It doesn't take their freedom, it gives it direction. They begin to realize that the kind of safety they wanted was never outside them, it was within. But to feel that safety, they have to stop leaving. They have to stay. And that's the hardest part, because staying means feeling everything. They start noticing the ways they check out, how they change the subject when emotions rise, how they disappear when things get good, how they downplay affection as if it's something small. Every moment of awareness becomes a crossroad. run or remain, hide or heal, withdraw or witness themselves. Slowly, they start choosing to remain, to feel their discomfort, to sit through affection, to let someone see them without retreating. That's the new bravery. Not the armor, but the exposure. Not the leaving, but the staying. Because staying is how they return home. Healing for the avoidant doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like micro moments of presence. Staying through an argument without shutting down, answering a message instead of disappearing, letting someone's care land and stay. It's small, but powerful, because each small stay undoes years of flight. And every time they choose to stay, their nervous system whispers, "This is new, but this is safe." Their body starts to soften. Their heart starts to open. Their fear starts to fade. This is how healing feels. Not like excitement, but like calm. The kind of calm that used to scare them. Now it feels like peace. They start to learn that staying isn't a trap. It's the beginning of freedom. When safety starts to feel strange. For the avoidant, real safety feels wrong at first. It feels like something's missing. The chaos, the chase, the tension that used to mean connection. Now everything's still, and stillness makes them uneasy. Because when you've lived in survival, peace feels foreign. They start to wonder, is this what love is supposed to feel like? No intensity, no push and pull, no guessing if they'll stay. Just presence, consistency, softness. It's new, and that newness feels like danger. Because calm isn't what their nervous system knows. Healing feels strange because their old wiring keeps whispering, something's wrong. The absence of conflict feels suspicious. The presence of love feels overwhelming. Their mind says, this can't be right. But their heart says, this is what I've been waiting for. And for a while, those two voices fight. They'll try to recreate the chaos, pick small fights, pull away for a few days, make space where none is needed, not to hurt, but to find something familiar. Because comfort, for them, used to mean distance, and it takes time to teach the body that calm can be safe too. This is the stage where healing requires patience, because when an avoidance starts to open, they feel raw, exposed, unarmored. Every kind word hits deeper. Every moment of stillness feels louder. They're not used to being seen. Without control, they don't know yet that being seen isn't the same as being judged. They start realizing that closeness isn't control, it's communication. That love doesn't mean merging or disappearing. It means sharing space without losing yourself. It means breathing without hiding. And that's a new rhythm, a rhythm that scares them because it asks for softness where they used to build walls. For so long, control felt like safety. If they could predict, they wouldn't be hurt. If they could manage distance, they wouldn't lose themselves. But now, they begin to see that control was just fear, dressed up as independence. They weren't protecting their peace. They were protecting their pain. They start to see how control was never safety. Safety was always in presence. Safety was being able to stay. Even when things got uncertain, safety was being able to say, I'm scared, without losing connection. And when they finally start to taste that kind of love, their body reacts. It trembles. It resists. It releases. Because love, real love, starts to reach places that logic never could. This is the breaking point, the threshold of true intimacy. It's where the avoidant stops observing love and starts feeling it. They stop narrating connection and start living it. And that shift feels like falling, not into someone else, but back into themselves. Because for the first time, they're not running. They're staying still enough to feel. And that's what intimacy really is. Not exposure, but arrival. Arrival in your body, in your heart, in the present. They realize that love doesn't demand control. It demands surrender. Not the kind that loses you, the kind that lets you be found. It's in that surrender that something inside them softens. The air feels different. Their voice lowers. Their shoulders drop. It's not performance anymore. It's peace. They start talking slower, listening deeper. They don't need to win. They just want to connect. That's when healing starts to become visible. The people around them notice it first. Their tone changes. Their silence feels safer. Their presence feels warmer. They're still themselves, but gentler, lighter, truer. Because when the avoidant learns to stay, they stop guarding love. They start living it. But even in healing, fear still visits. Old patterns whisper, don't get too close. Don't depend. Don't need. And the difference now is that they hear those whispers, but they don't obey them. They breathe through them. They stay, because staying is their new strength. That's what growth looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the choice not to flee. They realize that safety was never the absence of risk. It was the presence of truth. And love, real love, was never the danger. It was the home they were running from. All along, they start to see that control wasn't keeping them safe. It was keeping them separate. When connection stops feeling like a trap, something shifts quietly. The walls that once felt protective start to feel lonely. The silence that once felt safe starts to feel empty. And for the first time, they realize connection was never the problem. Fear was. They used to think that being close meant being trapped, that needing someone meant losing themselves. But now, as they begin to heal, they start to see the truth. Love isn't a cage, it's a mirror, and that mirror is showing them parts of themselves they buried to survive. At first, it's uncomfortable because intimacy doesn't just expose your heart, it exposes your history. It shows you where you shut down, where you flinched, where you stopped trusting. It brings light to all the places you hid in the dark. And that's what makes healing love so disorienting. It feels like someone standing in the room you used to cry in alone. And instead of turning away, they stay. The avoidance starts learning that love doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. It doesn't say, fix it first. It says, I'm here even now. And that is something they've never fully known. Because growing up, love was often conditional. Connection meant performance. Safety meant silence. But this new kind of love is steady, patient, unconditional, and it invites them to be seen without disappearing. For the first time, they stop editing themselves to be loved. They stop shrinking to be accepted. They stop hiding to be safe. And slowly, they realize something profound. The people who truly care don't need perfection. They need truth. They begin testing it, letting small truths out. A soft "I missed you," a hesitant "that hurt," a quiet "I'm scared." And instead of rejection, they find understanding. Instead of distance, they find warmth. And that experience rewires something deep inside them. It teaches their body that vulnerability doesn't equal danger. It equals connection. They start craving depth instead of distance, because distance was never peace. It was protection. And now that they can breathe in someone else's presence, they don't need protection from love anymore. They can finally let love in. It's not perfect. They still flinch sometimes. They still retreat for air. But the difference now is that they come back. They don't vanish. They return because love to them now isn't suffocation, it's safe space. And that's how you know healing is happening when they can be close without needing to escape. Their language changes too. They stop saying, I don't need anyone, and start saying, I'm learning to let people in. They stop confusing solitude with strength because now they know strength is being able to stay soft in a world that taught them to shut down. They begin to see how their past was never the enemy. It was the teacher. Every wall they built was a lesson in protection. Every retreat was a cry for safety. And healing isn't destroying those defenses, it's understanding them. It's learning to say, thank you for keeping me safe. And now, I don't need you anymore. There's a calm that comes when you stop fighting your own heart, when you stop treating closeness like an attack, when you realize that love can be chosen without losing control. That's what the avoidant starts to experience here. Peace in presence. They stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. They stop rehearsing escape routes. They stop living like love is a countdown to pain. Because this time, it's different. This time, they're aware. And awareness changes everything. Because once you've seen how your fear runs the show, you can't unsee it. You start catching yourself in the distance, in the silence, in the emotional retreat. And instead of running further, you pause, you breathe, you soften. That pause, that single breath, is where the healing happens. Connection no longer feels like losing yourself. It feels like finding yourself in someone else's eyes. Because now you're not merging, you're meeting. You're not abandoning yourself, you're expanding. And that realization changes everything. That's when love becomes a choice, not a threat. Because now, the avoidant knows that being seen isn't something to survive, it's something to cherish. And the walls they once built to stay safe begin to crumble, not from force, but from understanding. They finally feel it. That rare stillness inside. That doesn't come from control, but from peace. And that peace is the truest sign that they're healing, not because they've become someone else, but because they've finally come home to themselves. The return home. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no grand awakening, no sudden tears in the middle of the night, no dramatic speech about change. Healing, for the avoidant, comes quietly, like the first morning they wake up and don't feel the need to run. They still feel the impulse sometimes, that instinct to retreat, that whisper that says, it's safer alone. But now they know the voice. They recognize it. And instead of obeying, they listen. They don't fight it anymore. They sit with it. Because now they understand. That voice was never the enemy. It was the wounded child, trying to protect them. They start talking back gently. I know you're scared. I know love used to hurt. But we're not there anymore. And something shifts inside them. The part that once only trusted distance begins to trust presence. They stop needing chaos to feel alive. They stop chasing unavailable people because unavailability was how they kept control. They stop picking people who make them prove their worth because now they know they have worth. Their definition of love changes. It's no longer adrenaline. It's no longer anxiety disguised as attraction. It's not about chasing what hurts, just to feel something real. It's calm. It's grounding. It's peace. And for the avoidant, peace used to feel terrifying because peace means stillness. Stillness means awareness. And awareness means feeling. But now, they welcome it. Healing love isn't loud. It doesn't demand. It doesn't beg. It waits. It breathes. It understands. And that's exactly what the avoidant learns. That love doesn't rush you. It meets you where you are and gently invites you to come closer. There's a moment, a simple one, when they realize they're not afraid anymore. Maybe it's when someone hugs them and they don't freeze. Maybe it's when they say, I love you, and it doesn't feel like a loss of power. Maybe it's when they're alone and they don't feel abandoned. Whatever the moment looks like, it feels like coming home because that's what healing truly is. A homecoming, not to a person, not to a place, but to yourself, to the version of you that was never broken, only hidden, to the child who learned to disappear just to stay safe, and to the adult who finally says, you can come out now. They start choosing differently, not out of fear, but from awareness, not because they need someone to save them, but because they want someone to walk with them. And that difference is everything, because healing doesn't make them perfect, it makes them present. They learn that love isn't about fusion, it's about freedom. It's the freedom to feel, the freedom to speak, the freedom to stay, and most importantly, the freedom to leave without disappearing. Because healed people don't ghost. They communicate. They don't run from conflict. They stay curious. They don't use silence as a shield. They use it as space to understand. They also stop idolizing loneliness. Solitude still has its place. It's still sacred, but it's no longer a hiding spot. It's rest, not retreat. Reflection, not escape. Because now they know that connection doesn't erase them, it expands them. Healing doesn't erase their past, it integrates it. They no longer see themselves as the broken one. They see themselves as the one who survived, adapted, and learned. And now they're unlearning, gently, unlearning that love equals danger, unlearning that closeness means control, unlearning that independence must come with isolation. They start to forgive themselves for the walls, for the exits, for the silence, for all the people they pushed away just to feel safe again. Because healing isn't about punishment, it's about compassion. And the avoidant finally learns to offer themselves the one thing they never received: understanding. It's strange, in a beautiful way, when they realize that the love they crave from others was the love they needed from themselves. That being known wasn't just about someone else seeing them, it was about them seeing themselves and not turning away. Now, they can hold both truths. I needed distance, and I need connection. They can be independent without being disconnected. They can love without losing themselves. And that's what freedom truly is: not escape, but safety within closeness. In this place, relationships feel different. They don't seek validation, they seek understanding. They don't perform to be chosen, they rest in being seen. They don't fear being known, they welcome it. Because being known now feels like belonging, not exposure. And maybe that's what they were running from all along. Not love, but recognition. Because once someone truly sees you, you can't hide behind your defenses anymore. But now, they don't want to. They want to be seen, fully, honestly, softly. And that is the quiet power of healing. Love to them now isn't a battlefield, it's a bridge. It connects instead of consumes. It teaches instead of tests. It expands instead of erases. And that realization is the moment they stop leaving themselves. For good, they finally understand. The people who love you can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. And now that they've met themselves, with compassion, with honesty, with presence, they can finally meet others too. Not with walls, but with warmth. Not with fear, but with truth. And so, the avoidant who once ran from being known is now becoming known, first to themselves, then to the world. not by force, but by choice. And that choice is the most beautiful sign of all, that they are healing. Because healing isn't when you stop needing love, it's when you stop fearing it. If this spoke to something deep inside you, you're not alone. Healing avoidance isn't about changing who you are, it's about remembering who you were before fear taught you to hide. If you're on that journey, take a breath, stay gentle, and keep walking toward yourself, because you don't have to run anymore.